Something is unraveling behind the scenes. And it's much worse than anyone expected. With just days before the private tests in Barcelona, some of the most powerful teams in Formula One, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, are now dealing with silent failures, last-minute rebuilds, and technical systems that simply won't start. This isn't just a late update or a missed delivery. This is a foundational breakdown across nearly every factory on the grid. And the most alarming part? No one is showing their car publicly. No one is releasing data. And the test itself, for the first time in years, will be held behind closed doors. Whatever is happening right now, they don't want us to see it. Because what's coming in Barcelona might not be the start of the season. It could be the collapse of it. It's hard to overstate just how much pressure the teams are under right now. 2026 was always going to be the biggest regulation change in a generation. But no one expected it to break things this early, and this badly. The hybrid systems are new. The energy balance between combustion and electric has shifted. The aerodynamics are less about downforce, and more about drag efficiency and energy recovery. And suddenly, every assumption teams had about design, about packaging, weight, cooling, is falling apart under real-world stress. The cars they've spent months building are struggling to stay alive in the sim. Test benches are showing software conflicts. Power units are surging in unpredictable cycles. Some systems are locking into safety modes before they even complete a full lap of virtual testing. Red Bull, the dominant force for 3 seasons, is facing an unfamiliar reality. Their brand new Ford power unit isn't just unproven. It's unstable. Thermal management is off. Energy recovery is inconsistent. And what was meant to be a confident debut is turning into a rushed rescue operation. At Mercedes, the story isn't much better. Their 2026 concept was built around ultra-lightweight design, maximizing the new hybrid deployment rules. But now, that efficiency-first approach is revealing a bigger problem. The car can't stay within thermal tolerance under race-like loads. Ferrari took a different approach. Heavier, yes, but supposedly more robust. And yet early signs show that the weight penalty is starting to damage balance. And their cooling strategy, designed around a conservative hybrid window, isn't adapting to rapid deployment cycles like it should. Even the midfield is cracking. Sauber, Aston Martin, Alpine, they're not exempt. Reports are surfacing that some teams may not have completed their fire-up protocols by the time freight leaves for Spain. That means incomplete cars, unproven systems, and a level of uncertainty we haven't seen in over a decade. And that's the setup. That's the state of the grid, right now. Days before the first real laps. No one's ready. No one's safe. And Barcelona? It's no longer a test. It's triage. It's not just the technical data that's raising alarms. It's the way the teams are behaving. Public-facing operations have gone quiet. Launch events are being cancelled. Media days are being pushed back. And the usual preseason interviews with team principals and technical chiefs? Nowhere to be found. That's not just strategy. That's damage control. At Red Bull, multiple sources have confirmed that key integration tests were delayed for over a week. The ERS unit, critical for balancing the new 50-50 power split, was throwing voltage mismatches mid-cycle. A bug, maybe. A calibration issue. But the fix isn't fast, and the backup plan? Still being written. At Ferrari, engineers are working around the clock to repurpose parts of the cooling system. Not for performance, but for reliability. The car runs, but only for short stints. And when pushed beyond the initial deployment window, thermal buildup forces the system to default into safety mode. And Mercedes? They've stopped sim work with outside contractors entirely. Their most recent test cycle, one that should have confirmed full deployment mapping, was cut short. No official reason given. But the numbers coming out of Brixworth suggest something deeper. An energy deficit under full load conditions? And no workaround in sight. And now, behind the scenes, teams are preparing contingency plans. Not just for race distance, but for just running without failure. Some cars may hit the track in Barcelona with restricted power modes. Some might not show up at all. And a few, if the rumors are true, are already planning to swap components before the season even begins. That's not testing. That's survival mode. And the silence? It's not caution. It's fear. Here's the part no one on the outside wants to hear. But almost everyone inside already suspects. This chaos? It was predictable. And more than that, it was expected. The timeline the FIA enforced for 2026 wasn't just aggressive. It was unrealistic. And multiple sources from different manufacturers have now confirmed. The warnings were there 2 years ago. In late 2022, several engine suppliers submitted internal reports to the FIA. They outlined risks tied to the new hybrid deployment logic, the expanded electric power curve, and the removal of the MGUH, a system teams had spent years perfecting. Those reports didn't ask to cancel the reset. They asked for time. Time to integrate. Time to validate. Time to avoid exactly what's happening now. But that time was denied. Because the narrative was already moving. Formula One needed a future. A clean, fast, hybrid future. Sponsors had been briefed. Broadcasters had bought in. And the FIA? They couldn't afford to blink. So the rulebook was locked. The deadlines were fixed. And every team, regardless of budget, scale, or supplier, was told the same thing. You have what you have. And now? That deadline is here. And the technology isn't. That's not a setup failure. That's a structural one. And as teams scramble to make sense of what's breaking, many are now asking the real question. Was this ever supposed to work on time? What no one is saying right now is almost more important than what they are. There are no official complaints. No leaked protests. No team stepping forward to warn the public. And that's exactly the problem. Because the silence isn't confidence. It's strategy. Every team on the grid, from Red Bull to Haas, knows they're not alone in this. Everyone is behind. Everyone is hiding something. And no one wants to be the first to admit it. The second a team goes public with failure, they become the benchmark. The team that couldn't cope. The one the rest of the grid gets to point at and say, see? At least we're not them. So now, there's a standoff. Ferrari are reportedly running shorter and shorter dyno sessions, trying to prevent overheating that kicks in after only a handful of laps. Mercedes are delaying integration work, waiting to see what other teams declare before showing their hand. And Red Bull? Their media blackout isn't just about secrecy. It's about control. Because if the Ford power unit isn't ready, and signs suggest it isn't, they'd rather delay that story than be the ones to break it. But here's the catch. No one's talking. Because they all know that once one domino falls, they all fall. Once the press sees an incomplete car, once a power unit fails to start in front of cameras, once a team admits their ERS can't sustain full deployment, it's over. And until that happens, every garage is locked. Every test session is private. Every silence is a shield. But that silence is louder than ever. Because what it's hiding isn't one failure. It's a grid full of them. Then the 2026 championship won't be decided by speed. It'll be decided by resilience. Because this won't be a battle for pole. It'll be a battle for survival. Red Bull may have the strongest chassis concept on paper, but their entire architecture depends on a power unit that hasn't yet completed a full race sim. The Ford partnership was supposed to be the crown jewel, a display of innovation and independence. But right now, it's looking like a technical gamble with no margin for error. Mercedes are leaning hard on their legacy systems, but even they are facing integration issues with their new deployment maps. If the car overheats after 4 laps in race trim, no amount of legacy success will protect them from grid penalties and reliability setbacks. And Ferrari, despite having the most conservative build, might still be the only top team with a full functioning package by Bahrain. They're not fast yet, but if the others can't finish, they won't have to be. That's the wild card. Reliability may become the currency of early 2026. And teams like Aston Martin or even Sauber, those who bet on proven suppliers and simpler architecture, could find themselves in the top 5. Not because they found speed, but because they avoided disaster. And that flips everything. Sponsors will shift focus. Drivers will start to rethink long-term plans. And the FIA? They'll be forced to consider short-term rule flexibility. A slippery slope that opens the door to team-specific allowances, deployment rule tweaks, or postponed penalties disguised as exceptions. And once that door opens, the real race won't be on the track. It'll be in the meeting rooms. Who can negotiate better hybrid allowances? Who can lobby for more ERS calibration leniency? Who can hide their problems long enough to benefit from someone else's collapse? Because this isn't just a grid under pressure. It's a grid on the edge of political warfare. And if this pressure keeps building, 2026 might be remembered for something other than racing. It might be the season where Formula One's reset became its reckoning. So now, it all comes down to a few silent laps in Barcelona. No live streams. No official lap times. No open access. Just closed garages, muffled engines, and silence. And that silence? It won't protect them for long. Because once the cars roll out, even for a handful of laps, we'll start to see what's real. Which teams are running at full power, and which ones are hiding behind limited modes. Which power units can complete a race simulation, and which ones are already being rebuilt. There won't be official statements. There never are. But the signs will be there. In the number of laps, in the tire usage, in the small decisions that only insiders catch. And when that happens, the crisis will no longer be behind the scenes. It will be visible, undeniable. Because once the illusion breaks, once the public sees that the future of Formula One isn't ready, the entire system comes under pressure. Media will dig deeper. Sponsors will demand answers. And the FIA, they'll be forced to either defend the timeline or admit they rushed a revolution. And the worst part? This might just be the beginning. Because if this is where we are before the first race, before the lights go out, before the season even begins, then imagine what's waiting mid-season. Imagine what's coming when the calendar gets tighter, the updates come slower, and the politics get louder. This test in Barcelona? It won't fix anything. It'll only show us how broken things already are. And if this collapse spreads, it could reshape not just the 2026 season, but everything that comes after. Because Formula One's future isn't being written in the regulations anymore. It's being written in fire-up rooms, under pressure, in silence. And that silence is about to crack.